last few laps of the race, promoting Hamilton into the top 5, before the Brit himself pitted as well a few laps later. Max Verstappen was let through for the lead, with 16 laps to go, by Sergio Perez, before Lewis Hamilton took the fastest lap, moving up to 6th on Esteban Ocon. George Russell was pitted from 3rd on lap 52, falling behind Bottas, before Norris did the same, coming out in the points just ahead of Mick Schumacher. George Russell got back past Valtteri Bottas, going down into turn 1 with 12 laps to go, before Checo Perez pitted from 2nd and Alonso pitted from 7th, coming out behind Mick Schumacher, who had been promoted to the points by Yuki Tsunoda's stop a lap earlier. Fernando Alonso made a place back up on Mick Schumacher on lap 56, before Yuki Tsunoda did the same down into turn 1, Mick being cruelly denied points for the second weekend running. Sainz, who had been gaining on the Alfa Romeo for many a lap, finally made a move stick on lap 58, before Hamilton followed suit at turn 3 on his former teammate, Lewis having recovered from nearly the back of the grid to 4th. Mick Schumacher dropped further back on lap 60, this time becoming the prey of Sebastian Vettel, the young German having struggled in the Spanish heat. Lewis Hamilton would make it a 3-4 for Mercedes after overtaking Sainz into turn 1, completing a phenomenal comeback drive on lap 61. But cooling issues that George Russell had been complaining about earlier in the race came back to life in the dying embers. Lewis Hamilton told to drive slowly or risk a DNF, conceding a place to Carlos Sainz in the dying stages. Well, what an up and down race for all teams. This has to be one of the most interesting Spanish Grand Prix in over a decade. We had Max complaining about DRS, then taking the victory, promoting him to top spot in the championship, as well as continuing his run of winning whenever he finishes. Charles leading comfortably, then losing power. Lewis spinning, recovering, and managing to hold on for P5. His first top 5 finish of the season, barring his podium at Bahrain. Sainz going wide, dropping out of the points, then recovering to 4th, and Bottas running in the podium positions before dropping to 6th. The two Alpines were split by Norris, Alonso recovering 11 places at his home race to 9th, Yuki Tsunoda rounding out the top 10. Vettel, Ricciardo and Gasly followed, with Mick Schumacher in P14, the Haas driver looking on for points before slipping back. Stroll was in 15th, Kevin Magnussen and Alex Albon were the last of the finishers, the red hair not having worked this time around, and Leclerc and Zhou did not finish. Now for my driver of the day, and despite his cooling issues close to the end, for a phenomenal recovery drive, it has to go to Lewis Hamilton. Despite qualifying 6th and looking likely to move up places in the opening melee, he incurred a puncture and after contact with Kevin Magnussen, but he still managed to recover to the top 5 by the second round of pit stops and snuck past Bottas, who went for the less effective 2-stop strategy, nearly making the move on Carlos Sainz for 4th stick, but losing out due to cooling issues. However, it was still his first top 5 of the season, as I said, despite his Bahrain podium. Great result. And following on from Lewis Hamilton's success, my team of the race was Mercedes, whose major upgrades paid dividends, resulting in George Russell's second podium of the season and Lewis Hamilton's 5th points finish of the season. And it also means that Mercedes are now 70 points ahead of so-called third-place rivals McLaren, who had a pretty poor day, Daniel Ricciardo ending up in P13 and Lando Norris picking up a couple of points in P8. And finally, for my struggle of the race, and it has to be Mick Schumacher, who looked very strong in the early stages, up as high as 6th, before slipping into the lower points-paying positions. However, by the time the second pit stops came around, he was out of the top 10, and after a brief foray in the points, after many took a third pit stop, he fell to 14th. Mick, once more, unable to convert a Q3 qualifying into points. Before the end of the podcast, let's reflect on the key learning points from the weekend. The Mercedes' upgrades have clearly paid off, with a quality podium all the proof necessary for them, but at the same time, they also faced big cooling issues on both cars, which culminated in a possible 2 extra points lost. The Ferrari engine has also proved that it is not as bulletproof as some may have initially thought, with both Charles Leclerc and Zhou Guanyu's retirements a result of reliability issues. Finally, Alpine have shown the strength of their race pace once more, with a second double points finish of the season, Esteban Ocon's 6 points, maintaining his 9th place in the championship, and Fernando Alonso recovering well to 9th from the back of the grid. And with that, thank you for listening to F1 Every Week. Congratulations to Max Verstappen on his 24th victory in the sport, and tune in next Sunday for a review of the Monaco Grand Prix.